There comes a point in a man's life when he can no longer pretend that his habits are harmless. First, it feels small. A quick escape, private indulgence, a few minutes of relief after a long day. But over time, those little choices begin to shape the mind, the body, and the spirit. And slowly, almost invisibly, a man who once had ambition starts to feel tired without reason, distracted without cause, and empty even when nothing seems to be wrong. This is how many men lose themselves today. Not in one dramatic collapse, but through 1,000 quiet surrenders. Pornography, endless scrolling, fast food, late nights, cheap dopamine disguised as comfort. Each one promises release, but in the end, it takes more than it gives. It drains energy. It weakens discipline. It dulls the hunger for real achievement. And before a man realizes it, his mind becomes softer, his focus becomes weaker, and his confidence begins to crumble under the weight of his own impulses. You can see it in the way he wakes up heavy, already tired before the day has even begun. You can hear it in his voice when he says he will change tomorrow. You can feel it in the silence of a man who knows he is not living up to what he was meant to be. Many call it stress. Others call it burnout. But often, what is really happening is much deeper than that. The brain has been trained to chase pleasure instead of purpose, comfort instead of conquest, escape instead of growth. And once that pattern takes root, it does not just affect a man's habits. It affects his identity. His relationships suffer. His work suffers. His self-respect suffers. He stops trusting himself, and when a man cannot trust himself, everything else becomes harder to build. If this sounds familiar, do not dismiss it. Sometimes the most important warning comes in the form of a quiet discomfort that keeps returning until you finally pay attention. And if you know another man who needs to hear this, give the video a like, because this message may be the first step back toward clarity. The real question is not whether these habits are powerful. The question is whether you are ready to take your power back. A man does not lose his strength overnight. He loses it in small, quiet moments that no one sees. A late-night promise broken in front of a glowing screen. A bag of empty calories eaten not because the body needs fuel, but because the mind wants relief. Another hour gone to mindless scrolling. Another burst of cheap excitement that fades almost as soon as it arrives. And little by little, the mind that was built for focus, discipline, and purpose becomes trained to chase comfort instead of growth. That is the hidden trap. These habits do not just waste time. They reshape desire. They teach the brain to expect reward without effort, release without responsibility, pleasure without meaning. And once a man becomes accustomed to that pattern, everything difficult starts to feel heavier. Work feels slower. Goals feel farther away. Even simple tasks begin to demand a strength he no longer seems to have. He tells himself he is tired, distracted, or unlucky, but often the deeper truth is more painful. His energy has been leaking through the cracks of self-indulgence. Picture a man sitting alone in a dim room, phone in hand, eyes tired, back slumped, telling himself tomorrow will be different. He has felt this before. He has made the same vow in the same silence. Yet tomorrow arrives carrying the same impulses, the same excuses, the same invisible chains. This is how weakness is built. Not through one great failure, but through repeated surrender. And the cost is not only mental. It reaches into confidence, into relationships, into the way a man carries himself in the world. When he cannot control his appetites, he begins to doubt his own word. When he breaks promises to himself, he weakens the foundation of self-respect. A man may still look fine on the outside, but inside there is often a restless emptiness, a quiet shame, a sense that something essential has gone missing. If any of this feels familiar, do not dismiss it. Recognizing the damage is not defeat. It is the first honest step toward recovery. A man can reclaim what he has given away, but he must stop calling poison harmless and start calling discipline by its true name. And once he understands what these habits have taken from him, the next question becomes unavoidable. How does he begin to take his mind back? What happens in a man's life when he gives his strongest energy to his weakest habits? Slowly, almost invisibly, his mind begins to change. The fire that once pushed him to work, lead, protect, and build starts to dim. He wakes up tired, even after sleep. He sits down to focus, but his attention drifts. He tells himself he will start tomorrow, and then tomorrow becomes another week, another month, another year. That is how vice wins, not with one dramatic collapse, but with small daily surrenders. A man trapped in this cycle often does not look broken on the outside. He may still go to work, still pay bills, still smile at family dinners. But inside something is missing. His hunger for life feels buried under fog. The brain, constantly fed with cheap stimulation, becomes less willing to tolerate effort, discipline, or patience. Real work feels heavy. Real goals feel distant. Real women, real achievement, real purpose begin to seem harder to reach than they should be. And this is why so many men today feel frustrated without knowing why. They are not lazy by nature. They are overstimulated, overfed with artificial pleasure, and undernourished in the areas that build character. When a man chooses instant release too often, he trains his mind to avoid discomfort. But growth has always lived on the other side of discomfort. Strength is not built in the moment of temptation. It is built in the moment of refusal. Imagine a man sitting alone late at night, phone in hand, eyes tired, mind restless. He knows he should stop. He knows the cost. Yet part of him says, just one more time. That voice does not sound dangerous, but it is. Because every time he obeys it, he weakens the part of himself that must one day face pressure, responsibility, and pain. If he cannot master his impulses in private, how will he carry himself with power in public? If this sounds uncomfortably familiar, pause for a moment and think honestly. How much of your energy has been traded for momentary relief? And how much of the man you were meant to become has been delayed by habits that demand nothing but take everything? The good news is that awareness changes everything. A man who can see the pattern can break the pattern. And once he starts cutting off the endless inputs, the mind begins to clear in ways that are almost shocking. In the next part, we'll go deeper into how to reclaim that focus and redirect your energy before it is too late. When a man gives his mind to constant stimulation, he rarely notices the damage at first. It does not arrive like a storm. It comes like a leak under the floor, slow and silent, until one day the house is unstable and he cannot understand why. He wakes up tired. He sits down to work and cannot concentrate. He tells himself he is just stressed, just older, just busy. But deep down, he knows something has been drained from him. The spark is still there, but it has been buried under repetition, pleasure, and excuses. This is how vice weakens a man from the inside out. It does not merely waste time. It reshapes desire. The brain learns to chase what is easy, immediate, and artificial, and in doing so, it stops respecting what is hard, meaningful, and real. A conversation feels heavy. A workout feels optional. A quiet morning feels uncomfortable. The man who once had ambition now avoids resistance, because his reward system has been trained to expect comfort without effort. And when life asks him to build, endure, or lead, he feels strangely unprepared. Picture a man sitting alone in a dim room, phone glowing in his hand, the rest of the world asleep. He knows tomorrow will come with unfinished work, strained relationships, and another promise to change. But he keeps scrolling, keeps consuming, keeps numbing. Not because he is evil, because he is exhausted, trapped in a cycle that offers relief while stealing strength. That is the lie of cheap dopamine. Promises peace, but delivers weakness. Promises escape, but creates dependence. And the longer a man stays there, the more distant he becomes from discipline, confidence, and purpose. This is why so many men feel disconnected from their masculine center. Their energy is being spent before it can be directed. Their focus is fragmented. Their willpower is constantly negotiated away. And yet, there is still hope because what has been trained can also be retrained. The mind is not finished. The body is not beyond repair. The spirit is not gone. But recovery requires honesty. It requires a man to stop calling every impulse just a habit and start seeing it for what it is, a force shaping his life. If this is hitting close to home, take a moment and like the video if you believe men need stronger truth. not softer excuses. Because the next step is not just about stopping a habit. It is about learning how to reclaim your energy, redirect your drive, and rebuild the self-control that vice tried to erase. And once you see that path clearly, everything begins to change. The first step is not glamorous. It rarely feels heroic. It feels like closing a tab, putting the phone face down, and sitting in the silence long enough to hear your own thoughts again. For many men, that silence is uncomfortable at first because it exposes what the noise had been covering. Fatigue, guilt, frustration, and the quiet fear that time has slipped away. But that discomfort is not failure. It is the beginning of recovery. A man who has spent years feeding his mind with cheap pleasure does not rebuild his life overnight. He rebuilds it in small, deliberate acts of restraint. He learns to notice the moment before the impulse wins. The moment his hand reaches for the phone without purpose. The moment boredom whispers for escape. The moment stress asks for comfort and old habits rush to answer. In that instant, strength is not the absence of desire. Strength is the decision to not obey it. That is why dopamine detox is not a trend. It is a return to order. It teaches the mind to tolerate peace without demanding constant stimulation. It restores patience. It sharpens attention. It gives the body a chance to remember what real energy feels like when it is no longer being drained by endless consumption. A man may not realize how exhausted he has become until the craving begins to fade and his mind, for the first time in years, starts to feel clear. And when that clarity returns, something deeper awakens with it. Discipline becomes easier. Work feels more meaningful. Conversations become more present. Even the way he carries himself changes. He stands a little straighter. He speaks with less hesitation. He stops living like a slave to impulse and starts acting like a man with direction. That is the hidden reward no vice can ever give. Self-respect. A wise man once said, "You do not rise to the level of your desires. You fall to the level of your habits." And that is exactly why this battle matters. Every choice either weakens the mind or strengthens it. Every private compromise leaves a mark. Every refusal to give in builds a foundation. If this message is hitting home, take it seriously. You do not need perfection today. You need honesty. You need one clean decision, then another. And if you know someone who needs this reminder, give the video a like so it reaches the men who are still trapped in silence. Ask yourself this: what would your life look like if your energy no longer belonged to your impulses? In the next part, we go even deeper into how to turn that energy into power. At some point, every man has to decide whether he will keep feeding the habits that weaken him, or begin the difficult but honorable work of becoming stronger. No one drifts into discipline by accident. It is built in silence, in the moments no one applauds, when the screen is dark, the kitchen is closed, and temptation is still whispering. That is where the battle is won. If this message has hit you hard, maybe it is because some part of you already knows the truth. You were not meant to live tired, distracted, and divided against yourself. You were not made to trade your focus for fantasy, your strength for convenience, or your future for a few minutes of escape. There is still a better version of you beneath the noise. He has not disappeared. He has only been buried under too much indulgence and too little responsibility. So start small, but start today. Put distance between yourself and the things that drain you. Clean your environment. Guard your attention. Move your body. Wake up with a plan. Learn to sit with discomfort instead of running from it. The urge will speak, but it does not have the final word. Every time you refuse a cheap impulse, you reclaim a piece of your mind. Every time you choose discipline over appetite, you strengthen your character. And if you have been carrying shame, let this be the moment you drop it. Shame keeps a man trapped. Responsibility frees him. You do not need to hate yourself to change. You need to tell yourself the truth, then act like your life matters. Because it does. A stronger life is not built by perfect men. It is built by men who stop lying to themselves and begin again with courage. If this message gave you something to think about, leave a like so more men can hear it too. And tell me honestly, are you ready to take control of your mind before your habits take control of you? If you want more truth like this, make sure you subscribe because this is exactly where the journey begins.